This fella going through the building. And I'm here. Only been at this location since November, but I was at the other one for 4 years. I've been doing this altogether since in May of 2015.
Mm.
You know, going through all the legal stuff and all that.
Good job.
We live. Hey everybody, thank you. This is another night, another day, another dollar. So welcome to Jazz Katz. So now, you know, you've been seeing me on social media. We're talking about building an international, global jazz community. And that's what I set out to do. So I personally sit in this chair now because I want to make sure I bring you the best out of the jazz culture. And I want everybody to know and remember and pass the word that jazz is a lifestyle. It's a culture. It's not just a genre of music. So as I strive to try to bring you the best in jazz culture and jazz talent, along with other types of entertainment, I appreciate your support and all your ideas, opinions, critiques, etc. Just give me your feedback. I can take it. So right now, we're going to jump into the show. And I thank you for tuning in. You got time to share it with your friends and your neighbors and your family, because tonight we're going to have another awesome guest. And don't take my word for it. Give me some feedback and let me know how you think this guy is after you hear him, after you meet him. So tonight we have the John D. Boyd, a Detroit native. And when you find out what this guy's doing for the industry and how he's trying to help all the ambitious up-and-coming talent and how he's trying to help level off all the veterans, I'm sure you'll agree and understand why I'm excited to have this guy here. So welcome, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you very much, Roger. I'm
Yeah.
glad to be here. I'm glad to be home, and especially glad to be here with you.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I feel honored. You know, your resume and your experience and your just connections in the jazz, in the music culture, not just jazz. That's my thing, but I know your scope is deeper than that. But yeah, a Detroit native, so I appreciate that. Anytime we had some Detroiters in here, that makes me feel even better. So what part of town did you grow up in Detroit?
Well, I was born on the east side, and first part of my life I grew up on the east side of Detroit. Street called Bewick, Navajo, Reynolds, over there near off Davidson Freeway.
Okay.
And then later I moved to the west side on Broad Street.
Okay.
And ended up on Manor, and so east and west, but my roots are on the east side.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Now,
that's me.
So I'm gonna get into the details of your career, but like just give us a history. I think it's I don't know if I think I'm assuming you might be a little bit of the generation before me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pushing 60, so you know. But
I was.
Go
yeah,
ahead.
Yeah, I was born in '63, so.
okay,
I
couple
got you
years, couple years. So I guess we are peers. Okay, so all right. So what? It's kind of, I understand the time you grew up. So you, like me, you came in like as a teenager when Motown was at its heyday, or you came of age
definitely.
during the 70s and stuff when it was at its. Is that what sparked your musical interest? Like, what got you into music of all things?
Yeah. I'm from a musical family, like 3 generations. So
Okay.
my mother was a gospel singer, and she sang in the church in Alabama. You know, when she married my father, they moved up north to Detroit, and we continued to the music tradition of the Boyds and the Petersons. So I'm one of 11 children, and all of my siblings were singers, and so we sang in the church, and most of my family was also aspiring artists. So they were trying to get into the Motown trend, right? And I watched my brother with his group,
Okay.
form a group, and so I grew up in that Motown era when there was hit after hit, and we were playing music on the front porch, and my sisters were dancing, and I was inspired by that. So
Okay.
that's more the early history of my musical experience.
Okay, and I share that with you. Having a musical family, not as extensive as yours, not as deep with family members, but my parents were both in the music business, some uncles and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, and
Mm-hmm.
just about everybody on our block, like somebody had a band. Every high school had a band.
Choir, yeah,
So
yeah.
and we always give the spotlight to Motown. But I just want to say, as a proud Detroiter, we had. I think at one time I heard Detroit at one time from the 55 to like 75 had over 200 record labels,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them were like independent African American labels.
Right.
And we had some other legendary groups like the Spinners, the Dramatics, and Chapter 8. A lot of groups and stuff that weren't Motown groups. So I want to make sure we don't leave them out. But so,
Mm-hmm.
did you listen to secular music and
Oh
enjoy
yeah, I
the
listened
secular
to
music?
all the music, um, all the genres of music, and I loved all kinds of music. My family was inspired by all kinds of music, and we celebrated all kinds of music. So
Okay.
that was a big part of our family culture.
Okay, I can appreciate that because I know, coming from the faith-based backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
some of them were more restrictive,
Right,
and
right.
and those what they call PKs couldn't enjoy
Yeah, preacher's kids. Yeah.
secular music without sneaking to do it. So
Mhm.
I can appreciate that your family just let you enjoy it for the artistic value of it,
Mhm.
and is that so that was your platform to just get off into music. So were you just a singer, or do you play any instruments?
When I was 8 years old, I began to take some piano lessons. I lived with my godmother, and she was a piano teacher. So I started getting more in the formal training of music from the ages of 8 to 14, and learning some music theory, piano. Also, I began to sing, solos in my at my church home and all.
Okay.
And music was always a part of my life from the beginning.
Okay, and I know from experience coming up in that time in Detroit, the city was full of all types of musicians and all type of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And since you were active with music directly, were there any celebrated or known artists that you came across that were like mentors, or did you form any other bands outside your family? Like, how'd your transition from leaving home but staying in the music business?
Right, right. Well, after high school, and actually in high school, I got more into writing and journalism,
Okay.
and so music, the formal part of music, in terms of really being in music during high school,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in the formal side of music. I was more in writing, and my mentor at that time was Max Robinson, was the first black anchorman,
Okay.
who was an anchor on ABC News. So I began to develop my writing skills. It wasn't until a few years later, I was around 23, that I began to get more into songwriting, and I began to work with choirs. And a few years later, I founded the Boys and Girls Choirs of Detroit. So I got back into music, but this time more the formal side and more the cultural and arts and youth development in, I pioneered the whole children's choir concept here in Detroit. There were other choirs before me, but not
Okay.
at this level, because we replicated the Boys Choir of Harlem.
Oh, okay,
And worked
okay.
with Dr. Turnbull and his brother Horace Turnbull. And
Okay.
at that time, they were the premier boys, one of the premier boys choirs in the entire world. They had just completed working with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman for the soundtrack of Glory.
Okay.
That was like the pinnacle of the boys choir career. And I went over to Harlem, and I brought them here. Actually, I brought them here 3 times, and first time I brought them to the Museum of African American History in '97. In 2000, I brought them to the Opera House, and in 2001, I brought them to the Fox Theater.
Okay.
And Target had sponsored them. So, in the middle of all that, the boys and girls choirs was performing all over the Detroit metropolitan area, and my children were section leaders in the choirs.
Okay.
So I was actually developing a choir within my own home, and didn't really consciously realize that until years later, and then I started focusing on my children. I had, I have 9 children, and
Okay.
5 of them were really developed in the choirs. So I have my own group. It was called the Perfect Blend Group.
Okay. Now, I'm going to assume doing choir-based type music that the motivation for that must have been art or something other than commercial profit, because was that at that time a profitable type of music to be into? Like, so I guess what I'm asking is why choirs? Like, what made you go, other than the lure of the Harlem Boys Choir, but like, why did you pick that lane at that time?
I picked that lane because I was inspired by the work of Dr. Turnbull and the Boys Choir of Harlem. His motivation, like mine at the time, was using music as a tool of youth development. Choirs, I think the Boys Choir of Harlem was like 60 strong, and then they formed the Girls Choir, which had similar numbers. These were nonprofit entities, and the Boys and Girls Choirs of Detroit was a nonprofit entity. Our motivation was purely using music as a tool to uplift our boys and girls, and it's proven to be a great tool, because Anthony White was one of the first students and mentors in the Boys Choir of Detroit, and now he's the director of Detroit Youth Choir.
Oh, okay. So that's his roots.
His roots go back into the Boys Choir. Subsequent to the Boys Choir, he started he linked up with other choirs, and they're also part of his history. But the Boys and Girls Choirs of Detroit was really one of the most prominently featured choirs, and we were often in the newspaper, and we were often on television. We did a ABC news special, Channel 7 special at Orchestra Hall.
Okay.
A lot of history there. So.
Okay. So I noticed from your bio that what I see on paper, it looks like most of your music career has been focused around choirs and faith-based type music. But then I was surprised that to see you had a connection to Rock Nation, which we commonly know that as hip hop,
Right.
and, so have you ever indulged doing other types of music and other types of production or something other than the choir based artists?
Certainly, the progression. One thing, having a good choral foundation positions you to really understand all kinds of music, because choir is an orchestra of voices, and and it's a big band of voices. So the more instruments you have, the more experience you have at organizing those instruments. Um, so with my choirs, I directed, I arranged, I composed, I produced, I wrote, and we did a lot of original music. So 10, 15 years in, my children were the section leaders, and when they formed their own group, they were pretty advanced. So when we moved to New York right around 2006, the end of 2006, we began to pretty much emerge on the New York scene. And a few years later, it was my daughter Victory Boyd was discovered by Jay-Z through a friend of his, actually James Samuels, who was Seal's brother.
Oh, okay.
It only took one letter to Jay-Z for Jay-Z to entertain a meeting with me and my daughter in his office. And when he discovered that I had other children that were talented, he invited them to the meeting.
Okay.
And a few weeks later, he not only did a deal with them, but he did a deal with the entire family.
Okay.
And our family music company became an imprint at Rock Nation. So.
Okay. Now, a couple of things. One, if I'm correct, your daughter Victory is the first gospel artist signed to Rock Nation. Did I get
That's
that
true.
right? Okay.
Right. Rock Nation has done work with all kinds of gospel artists in terms of features and collaborations, but it's not a gospel label, and
Okay.
it's mainly a secular label.
Okay.
In fact, we were signed as secular artists, not as gospel artists.
Okay.
They made an exception in the contract to accommodate Victory because she wanted to do gospel, and because of that exception, she's going to be the first gospel artist out of Rock Nation. But she was signed as a secular artist. But she
Okay.
does a variety of music. She's an excellent jazz singer, and she sings a large variety. But and she does a lot of her own music. That was not gospel. But she took a turn towards gospel after working. I think partly because she worked with Kanye on his Jesus is King album.
Okay.
And she wrote, I think, 3 of those songs, or wrote on 3 of those songs, and worked closely with him in shaping that album.
Now, and this is a jazz program, and jazz is my thing. But because Rock Nation and Jay-Z are so high profile,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get into this for a minute because it seems to me that unexpectedly I would never, until I met you, I would have never thought, because I didn't hear anything about Rock Nation being diverse or going into any other direction other than hip hop. So can you give us some insight on what Rock Nation is like overall? What are they looking for? What is, where is a high profile businessman, rapper mogul like Jay-Z? Do you know of if Rock Nation is widening the scope of what type of music they're gonna put out? So they're not, just give us some insight about that if you know.
Jay-Z is committed to art, so I don't think he was necessarily looking for this kind of genre. I don't think there was this creative direction per se,
Mm-hmm.
but he's open, and he was open to a conversation. And when he saw Victory's cover of Nina Simone, "Feeling Good," I think that was something that impressed him. He's a big fan of Nina Simone.
Yeah,
He and
that's
his
all right.
wife.
Yeah.
And she covered that, and I think she did a very good job of that. Victory has a very unique voice, and I developed their voice in a very unique manner. All of my children have unique voices, but she particularly has a very unique voice, and it has a lot of body, a lot of texture. So I think he was attracted by the uniqueness of the voice and really the history of the family. I remember when he signed us, he walked in the boardroom and he said that we have to catch up to you all. You all don't worry about changing to catch up to us, which was a very powerful statement, and it spoke to the humility in his heart because I think he instinctively knew that Rock Nation was mainly geared towards hip hop, but he was willing to stretch into this new area and take our leadership in terms of understanding that we knew this sound that we had curated, and he was willing to take a bet on that sound.
Okay, I'm glad he did, because she does have a unique voice, a very good voice, I want to say. I got to take a quick station ID to let everybody know you're watching Jazz Cats on the coolest station in the world, WJZZ Cool TV, live streaming every day, but live streaming Jazz Cats every Wednesday at 8 p.m. So we have with us today producer, manager, I don't even know, you got so many hats, but we have John D. Boyd here, Detroit native, spent a lot of time in New York, and he's in here, and we're going to get into the second half of the show and talk about this wonderful workshop and event that he has coming up. And like us, follow us, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you like the programming that we're putting out, please show your support and give us some love and some likes, and also give us your feedback and comments about Mr. Boyd's interview today, and what's on your mind. So thank you for watching, and I appreciate you. So Mr. Boyd, segueing into the second half of the show, you talked about it doing an imprint deal with Rock Nation, and I know we're going to talk more about that's what I see this workshop, production workshop, as educating everybody. But can you explain what an imprint deal is? What is an imprint label?
Mm-hmm. So an imprint is when a label does a deal with a company as opposed to an individual.
Okay.
Because labels today are not so much into what I call holding an undeveloped artist by the hand and walking them through those stages of development. It's very costly, and a lot of times if an artist doesn't really understand what direction they're going in, you could lose a lot of money. They'd rather do a deal with a company and make them or partner with them. And I don't want to use the word make, but partner with them, because we have a partnership with Rock Nation, and so that they together with Rock Nation can really develop the artist. The development piece is a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of work, and a lot of intentionality. So as opposed to Jay-Z signing my daughter Victory directly, he signed the family music company, which is Peace Industry Music Group. Okay. And Peace Industry Music Group had already been in existence for about 6 years. And so I was primarily responsible for continuing to develop Victory and her 4 siblings, and their group is called Infinity Song. And so the Peace Industry Music Group became a subsidiary or a partner in the Rock Nation family. Okay. So that's what an imprint is. It is a smaller entity within a larger entity, and they're dealing company to company, or as opposed to company to individual.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but so we got a parent company, and then like you said, by doing the deal with another company, and you said did it allow you, is the advantage that you can bring in more talent rather than focus on one artist? you might have other talent in that same camp on that same imprint label that you can develop in conjunction with, your main artist. Or is that, am I on the right
Exactly.
track?
So
Okay.
Peace Industry Music Group, which is the family imprint, is a label um, within the Rock Nation family, and most of Rock Nation's major artists have imprints.
Okay.
Whether it's J. Cole or Rihanna or whatever, they can sign other artists in their imprints, and that and so that gives the artists that we sign indirect or even direct access to Rock Nation because they become part of the family. So up until this point, I've only worked with my children and my family, but we're opening up this imprint for the first time, really in this artist development workshop. And I've been entertaining conversations literally for the first time with artists to be a part of the Peace Industry Music Group imprint, and which is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the imprints have multiple artists, but I'm very selective, and I have a certain standard that we're shooting for.
Yeah.
So a lot of history is being made during this workshop.
Okay, and so let's get into the meat of the artist development and production workshop. So just getting educated about imprint and how all that infrastructure of a business and a music company works. You're bringing this artist development production workshop to Detroit, and I want to say why Detroit versus wherever else, or why is Detroit included? So that's the first question.
Oh, it's a good question.
Yeah.
It makes sense to bring it to Detroit. I'm a native Detroiter. I have a lot of history here in the arts and in the cultural community. The workshop started actually in Dallas, and that's where we got our proof of concept. It was not open to the public. I just launched a new hip hop collective, and we worked with them in Dallas and worked and developed the workshop there. And then I had to sit down and figure out where was I going next. And for me, Detroit was a natural progression for many reasons. Detroit is a great musical city, but mainly it's because I have a big concern for Detroit personally. I'm personally vested in Detroit, this being the place where I was born, and I have family here, and I have a lot of friends here, and then this is part of my own personal my legacy with the boys choir.
Okay.
So I thought this would be a great place to bring the workshop and to give my people here in this city some of the first opportunities that are going to be coming available through this workshop.
And I have some same interests and ambition and reasons like yourself. So I'm personally glad to know you and meet you, and I'm glad that you brought this workshop here because it's inspired me in a way for some of my ambitions, and I look over some of the things that you have planned to talk about and do, and I think it's just like a valuable resource and opportunity. So I want to get into the itinerary and let you talk about it, and you can explain the agenda. But you got things in here like entertainment law, and then you have things like creative funding and solutions, guerrilla funding. Kind of give us a little bit, just a sneak peek of explaining these things, these subjects. That you.
Well, entertainment law, we had Karen Jones Mitchell, who is one of the top African American female African American entertainment lawyers in the country. She's with a law firm called Nixon Peabody,
Okay.
and she spoke and presented virtually in Dallas. I was so impressed with the information that she gave the emerging artists. Also, we had David Hilfan, who's another major figure in the legal side of entertainment legal side of the entertainment world. One of the top entertainment lawyers in the country. The other part that you mentioned was creative funding.
Creative funding.
I had to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop my children, and a lot of that funding came from us singing in Central Park, busking in Central Park. We literally sang for almost 10 years in Central Park and raised money with people giving us donations and selling CDs. We would sing in Detroit before we moved to New York at every jazz festival.
Okay.
You would see a bunch of children, it was probably me and my children, singing and selling CDs. After we sang a verse, we'd stop and sell CDs. All of that was being poured into their development, into our recording process. Young people, I mean, it's so important for artists to understand that you can't wait for people to fund your dreams. You have to figure out a way to fund your dreams creatively. And when people see that you are dedicated yourself and that you're serious about what you're doing, you will attract capital, because capital attracts capital. Good business models attract people that are interested in investing. So it was many years before we attracted the hand and pen of Jay-Z.
Okay.
And so we'll get into that in the workshop. And there are other creative ways of funding. We have Jay Morrison as one of our speakers, and Jay has a phenomenal history of raising capital, crowdfunding. He's the founder of the Black House, or the Legacy Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. And a real estate guy down there in Atlanta. But we have a variety of speakers on a variety of subjects, from managers to entertainment lawyers to agents to people speaking about publishing and royalties and the whole spectrum of issues that artists should be concerned about.
Okay. Now, and you mentioned the term busking. So for those who don't know, that's when you see the street musicians, street artists, and they basically are working for tips and donations. That's what that is, right?
Right. And New York is one of the top busking cities in the world. So some of those artists are on the street make more than artists that are touring around the country, because they don't have the overhead. So it could be a smart business move if you're not too proud, and you're willing to overcome the stigma. Because if you look at on our Peace Industry Music website, you'll see artists from all over the world in Central Park, and some of them were classically trained artists from all top schools, and we would actually hire them to accompany us, because we had violins and all kinds of classical musicians, and that's a lot of that is how my children's ears were trained.
Yeah.
So when you look at Victory can produce, she can score, strings, horns. She has a total musical education, and a lot of that came from Central Park, from some of the best musicians, literally in New York.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, the Blue Man Group was discovered playing on the street, and now they're like this world-renowned group that do Vegas residencies and things. So, but yeah, now this terminology in here, guerrilla funding. Explain that. What is guerrilla funding? Now, I know I have to come to the workshop to get all the details, but just an overview.
That's a form of guerrilla funding.
Okay.
Busking is a form of guerrilla funding, but there are other forms. That's when you circumvent the powers that be and their barriers, because historically black people have been redlined and blocked out of capital markets. So you have to, as black people, we have to be very creative sometimes to come up with ways of circumventing and being disruptive with respect to how we access capital. Capital is there. When you see millions of people walking down the street, that's you have to figure out how to access, build a rapport with those people, as long as it's legal, and set up shop. So it's nothing new to our people. We may not call it guerrilla funding, but we have been guerrilla funding probably since the beginning of this country. Of this country.
Yeah. So now, in our closing out, almost, we have a few minutes, about maybe 10, 15 minutes. Let's. I want you to talk about why, who needs to be here at this workshop, and why.
Sure. The people that need to be in this workshop would be artists that have been investing in their craft, whether it be music or dance or film or acting or visual arts. And they want to understand the landscape. They want to understand how to navigate through the maze. They want to understand the technical side of the music industry so that they can be informed to make prudent decisions in terms of their next steps to get to the next level. Okay. Without, like, I've been in the formal music industry at the highest level. I was an advisor to Kanye West. I'm a partner to Jay-Z. I've been in the rooms where decisions are made, and so I'm committed to not shelter or hide that information. I'm not afraid of competition. So I'm really concerned that if young people or even older people are not equipping themselves with information, they could waste a lot of time. And so I put myself in the shoes of artists, and I have empathy. And I'm doing this because I want to open up the doors of information and grant access that in some instances rare access to information that I feel is vital, especially today with the market changing and everything being so fluid and everything being rearranged, because music is not monetized the way it used to be.
Right.
So every day there's some different discovery. There are a lot of new technologies coming out. Now we're dealing with AI, which can basically copy anything that is done in the human realm, including robots that are singing now. They used to be, we used to just be concerned about the instruments, but now they're singing and writing and doing everything that any human being can do. Yeah. So we have that on the right. There are so many new things happening. So it's very important that artists are educated so that they can understand that there is a path, there is a way forward, but that path is becoming more and more narrow. And in order to know that path, one has to be apply themselves to knowledge so that they can discover that path. So that's what this workshop is all about.
Okay, and I notice here we have in the advertisement in the flyer booklet talking about all the different features of the workshop and the agenda. I see the Detroit Rhythm, Drum and Music Celebration. So tell us about this attraction and just what to expect other than the insider information and tips. Like, give us an overview of the whole workshop, what it's going to consist of.
So the workshop is 5 days. Basically, during the day, it starts May 10th, and basically Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday during the day are classes. Okay. In the evening, there are showcases. Wednesday the 10th is this drum, rhythm, and music celebration. This is the opening night of the workshop. Okay. My son is an African drummer, and also we have Mark Whitsett, who's coming up from Dallas, and they're going to have a great drum celebration. Also, it will be some musical instruments there, but it's really a great celebration of the opening and also a celebration of our tradition. The second night, the showcase is my daughter Victory Boyd, the first gospel artist out of Rock Nation, and she's going to be featuring her new album and doing a historic gospel concert. The third night, that new hip hop band I talked about, Cornerstone, is going to be featured. Saturday, we have a Black Tie Fair Gala Infinity Song, which is my four children and have that sibling band is going to perform at that night. And then Sunday, we have the Mother's Day Brunch. And that's another concert with gospel and R&B. So we have a great celebration, and it's a great networking. A lot of artists will be there. So if you're an artist and you're looking to network with other like-minded people, this is a great opportunity to network, and then also this is a great opportunity to really enjoy music. Lastly, we're going to have midnight production sessions, jam sessions. These go from like midnight to 4 a.m. and we're working with some of the top musicians, and they're going to be curating a Detroit sound. And also, when we discover something, we're going to push the record button. I want Detroit to be one of the music production capitals of the world. Following the legacy of Detroit, it has been one of the music production capitals. We want to put it back on top. So these production sessions will be producers from throughout the city. We've been bringing producers from outside the city. I'm reaching out to Maxwell's the music director, Shed, who is one of the top Hammond organists literally in the world, and also a great jazz cat, which I'm going to introduce to you. Hopefully we can get him on the radio when he gets here. It's going to be one of those great reunions of musicians. It's intergenerational, so it'll be young and old and everybody in the middle. And it will be something that Detroit will remember for a long time.
Now, and I want to add this, looking it over and talking to you for the last couple of days, talking about the value of the workshop. So, I want to let people know, if you notice, you got everything included in here. You got breakfast, you have brunch, you have lunch, you have dinner, you have the education part of it, you have the networking part of it, you have the opportunity that you could be literally discovered in a sense. So I think it's a great value, and you don't have to leave. You'll have everything there that you need, and you're gonna follow up at the hotel, right?
Yeah, we're starting at the that's our base, Hotel St. Regis, and also the Masonic Temple. So most of the classes are at the Masonic Temple and the two showcases. At Victory's concert is going to be announced. It's going to be at a church in Detroit. We're still wrapping up that deal. But that's a very historic concert. She wanted to have it at a Detroit church. So we're wrapping up that deal now. So it will be announced. And the Black Tie Fair is at the St. Regis Ballroom, and the Mother's Day Brunch is at the St. Regis Ballroom.
Okay, and I'm glad of that. So, coming to an end, this is a jazz show, and I want to tie in the jazz. I think all the information and all the opportunity, it applies, like you said, to all artists. But I think jazz and blues artists in particular, they really need to get the business part when it comes to, like you say, how are we going to put jazz back in the forefront? So maybe it's some marketing strategies and some promotional strategies or innovation, some ideas that can be used. So I think, even though we talked about the influence of gospel and those types of choir thing and all this, I want if you are if you're lacking, you know where you're lacking at as far as your ambitions and your opportunities. I think this is a chance. Like, you don't have to wait for that management to fall out the sky or whatever. You can go here, invest in yourself. Invest, instead of going and buy that new foot pedal or that new cymbal or whatever. Get you a pass and trust, like what Mr. Boyd said, when you put that capital out there and invest in yourself, it's going to improve what you look like, sound like, think like, and you're going to attract that opportunity for more. You know, so I really want to make sure all my jazz artists get out there because they really need the boost. They're kind of like unplugged from the information because they're not what's hot right now overall. And so that's the tie-in for me that I want to say with the jazz people. But I want to ask you a question, and it's still on topic, I think, but it goes to the organization of this and the production of it. Like when you take Detroit and you compare it, is it a comparison to a place like New York or Atlanta even? Do you notice a difference in the acceptance or the attendance of things like this? The appreciative value, is it a difference, do you think? Or, I'm just curious to know.
Well, yeah, I think these other cities, obviously the population is greater. I think Detroit has a great element of people that are, would be great. Will really, this will really resonate with them, and they'll be very responsive. I think Detroiters, in some way, we may have to work a little harder to get their attention and spend a few more words on informing them as to the importance of things, and then perhaps parts of New York, when we're talking about Brooklyn or we're talking about Harlem or even parts of Manhattan. I think it was important for me to move my family to New York to discover a greater world and to get more connected to a greater arts community and music community. But there's a lot of positive things to be said about Detroit, but there's still a lot of work as we come out of the pandemic, as we come out of all the things that Detroit has been through for the last 50, 60 years.
Right. And I appreciate that. The reason I asked that question, and it goes back to what you said about just being aggressive. You can't sit and wait. And we have to realize, for all of us, like in my case, I'm more of a behind the scenes, I'm a promoter, producer kind of guy. We have to have real conversations with ourselves and our associates. The opportunities are not as great here as they may be in New York or other places. So that's even more reason why I'm saying take advantage of this workshop, because it may be, like you say, these top-notch lawyers, these top-notch producers, they're not here every day. They're not headquartered here. So unless you can get on a plane or you can move to another place, you have to take advantage of what's here right now today, and you have to be aggressive about it. That's why I asked the question, because we have to be real with ourselves as a collective and say, hey, listen, if I get upset when people try to tell me, suggest I should go to Atlanta or I should go here or there, I understand, but I want it to come to me. But I understand I have to do something to make it profitable, to make it attractive. So I think as a city, and this is an appeal to all you guys as we close out, support this event. Support the talent that you have here. Support the institutions and celebrate and welcome native sons like Mr. Boyd when they come in, and they, as he said, he's doing this because he wants to bring some opportunity, and he wants to help make that pool of talent bigger than just one place, right? So that was my reason for making the comparison, is because I shoot straight, and I just want to light the fire as we close out because I want people to say to get it and be like, oh yeah, you know, you got a point. Let me put off whatever I had going on, and if you can afford to, and if you can come down to this workshop, then do it. Ante up. If the entire group can't come, ante up and send one representative to take notes and record it and bring it back to the rest of the band, to the rest of the block, etc.
Right.
So
and sponsor too. If you're not an artist and you care about Detroit, you care about the future music of Detroit, then sponsor, adopt a child.
Yeah.
Like I was over there with Anthony White, and he's going to sponsor 5 of his choir members.
Yep.
You know, because they're graduating from high school, and he's about to lose them.
And
He's saying he likes this program. In fact, we're probably going to be doing a deal with him so that there will be a transition entity so when they graduate from the Detroit Youth Choir, that some of that top talent will have an opportunity to get into the industry.
yeah.
So there are all kinds of opportunities, and I'm talking with you,
Well,
Roger,
I'm gonna follow up because I gotta follow the rules and cut this off. We running out of time. We out of time. So we're gonna get on Facebook Live, everybody, so Mr. Boyd can finish his thought. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we talk to you later. Good night. So we can go out here
Okay.
and go